I, 21F, have been saving money since I was 16 for college. I started working as soon as I legally could because I always knew I wanted to go to college out of state. My parents weren't poor, but they made it clear early on that they wouldn't be able to fully support both me and my sister Fiona, 19F, through college, so we needed to be prepared. The funny thing is, I was actually following their advice. They always lectured us about financial responsibility and the importance of saving money. I took it seriously and started working at the local diner when I was 16, doing evening shifts after school. By 17, I was also working weekends at the mall. It wasn't easy balancing work and studies, but I managed to maintain good grades while saving almost everything I earned. Fiona was different. She never cared about working or saving money. Whenever she got money from our parents or relatives, she would spend it all on clothes, makeup, or going out with friends. Our parents never said anything to her about it. They would just smile and say she was young and had time to learn about responsibility. This was pretty much the pattern our whole lives. Different standards for both of us. When I was in high school, I needed to maintain straight A's or I would get grounded. When Fiona barely passed her classes, our parents would say she was just stressed and needed more support. When we were younger, she would regularly break my things, and I would be told to stop being selfish and share with my sister. But when I once borrowed her sweater without asking, I was grounded for a week. About 6 months ago, Fiona started dating Alex, 23M. He was honestly the worst. No job, lived with his parents, spent all day playing video games and talking about his big plans that never went anywhere. The first time she brought him home, he spent the entire dinner talking about some crypto investment that was going to make him rich. My dad, who works in finance, tried to warn him about pyramid schemes, but Alex just laughed it off, saying the older generation didn't understand digital currency. Our parents tried to talk to Fiona about him. They could see he was bad news. Even my mom, who usually takes Fiona's side in everything, told her she could do better. But Fiona wouldn't listen. She started spending more and more time at Alex's place, coming home late, and getting into fights with our parents about him. Last month, everything exploded. Fiona came home crying one evening. She gathered everyone in the living room and announced she was pregnant. Alex wanted to marry her, she said, but they needed money for the wedding and to start their life together. She said Alex had big plans for their future, but right now they needed some help getting started. Our parents were shocked. Mom started crying, and Dad just sat there with his head in his hands. They had just spent most of their savings on renovating our house. They had taken out a loan for it and were still paying it off. I knew they didn't have much savings left. That evening, my parents called me to the living room after Fiona had gone to her room. They looked really serious. Mom had clearly been crying more. Dad started talking about how family needs to support each other in difficult times. I knew where this was going before they even said it. They wanted me to give my college savings to Fiona. They had it all planned out. I could take a student loan instead. They said since I had good grades, I might even get scholarships. They talked about how Fiona needed the money more right now because she was going to have a baby. Dad said he would help me figure out the loan situation later. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 5 years of hard work, all my savings, they wanted me to just hand it over to Fiona and Alex. I refused immediately. I told them I wasn't going to sacrifice my future for Fiona's poor choices. Mom started crying again, saying I was being selfish and didn't care about my sister or my future niece/nephew. Dad got angry. He said if I was going to be this selfish, maybe I shouldn't live in their house anymore. He said they couldn't live with someone who would abandon family in their time of need. I still didn't agree. I knew if I gave up my savings, I could kiss my college dreams goodbye. Student loans would put me in debt for years, and there was no guarantee I would get scholarships. Besides, I didn't trust Alex. Something about the whole situation felt off. The next morning, I woke up to raised voices. My parents were in the living room with Fiona and Alex. Dad had papers spread out on the table. They were taking out another loan against the house. I stood in the doorway watching as they signed the papers. Mom was telling Fiona and Alex to use the money wisely, to start their life right. Alex was nodding along, saying he had it all planned out. They left early that morning to go shopping for baby stuff in the next town. Alex said his cousin owned a baby store there and would give them a good discount. They were supposed to come back that evening? They didn't. Fiona sent a text to Mom saying they were staying at Alex's cousin's place because they found some good deals and wanted to look at more stores the next day. My parents weren't worried at first. But when they didn't come back the next day, and their phones were switched off, my parents started panicking. They called Alex's parents, but they hadn't heard from him either. They filed a missing persons report, but the police said since Fiona was an adult and had left willingly with her boyfriend, there wasn't much they could do. They said they would look into it, but didn't seem very concerned. The atmosphere at home became unbearable. My parents blame me openly now. They said if I had helped with my savings, Fiona and Alex wouldn't have had to go to another town looking for deals. Mom kept saying if anything happened to Fiona, it would be my fault. Dad barely spoke to me anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed some clothes and moved in with my best friend Sarah. Her parents have always been nice to me, and they said I could stay as long as I needed. Right now, I'm just trying to process everything that's happened. Sarah says I did the right thing protecting my savings, but sometimes when I think about Fiona being missing, I wonder if I should have helped. But then I remember how irresponsible she and Alex have always been, and I know I made the right choice. Update: when a lot has happened since my last post. I've been staying at Sarah's house, and her parents have been really supportive. They even cleared out their office space so I could have my own room instead of sleeping on the couch. Sarah's mom keeps saying I can stay as long as I need to, which honestly makes me emotional sometimes because she's showing more care than my own parents have lately. 3 days after I moved out, I came home from my shift at the diner to find Sarah sitting on my bed, looking really worried. She was biting her nails, which she only does when something's really wrong. At first, she wouldn't tell me what was bothering her, but after I pressed her, she made me sit down and promised not to tell anyone what she was about to show me. Sarah's cousin Jenny went to the same high school as Alex and still had him on social media. She had been seeing some strange posts pop up on her feed. Jenny had screenshotted everything and sent it to Sarah. When Sarah showed me her phone, I felt sick to my stomach. There were dozens of pictures of Alex and Fiona in Mexico, partying at beach clubs and fancy restaurants. They were posting stories about living their best life and how they had finally escaped their toxic families. The photos made me furious. Here were our parents, worried sick, probably not sleeping, while these two were living it up in Mexico with the loan money. I wanted to send everything to my parents immediately, but Sarah grabbed my phone before I could. She said there was more I needed to see. She started showing me specific pictures Jenny had pointed out. In every single one of them, Fiona was drinking. There were shots of her doing tequila shots at bars, holding up cocktails by the pool, even one of her with a bottle of champagne. For someone who was supposedly pregnant and planning to start a family, she sure wasn't acting like it. Sarah and I spent the next few days digging deeper. Jenny was able to connect us with some of her old classmates who knew Alex. What we found out was disturbing. This wasn't the first time Alex had pulled something like this. He had a pattern. He would find girls from relatively well-off families, date them for a few months, and then convince them to get money from their parents one way or another. He had done this to at least 2 other girls in neighboring towns. One girl's parents had given him money to start a business. Another family had funded what they thought was a down payment on a house for their daughter and Alex. In both cases, he had disappeared with the money. Both families had eventually gone to the police, but since the girls had willingly given him the money, there wasn't much that could be done. I spent days agonizing over whether to tell my parents. Every time my mom texted me asking if I'd heard from Fiona, I felt guilty for keeping this information from them. They were devastated, calling hospitals and police stations every day, thinking something terrible had happened to her. But I also knew this would break them completely. Finding out that not only had Fiona helped steal their money, but she had also lied about being pregnant. I wasn't sure they could handle it. Sarah and I decided to gather more evidence before telling anyone. Jenny had been taking screenshots of everything, and she helped us track down one of Alex's previous girlfriends. The girl agreed to talk to us over the phone. She told us how Alex had manipulated her, making her feel like he was the only one who truly understood her. He had isolated her from her family and friends before convincing her to ask her parents for money. It was exactly what he had done with Fiona. While we were still figuring out how to handle all this information, something unexpected happened. My mom's friend Lisa was shopping at the mall in our town when she saw Fiona. She was with Alex at the food court, eating and laughing like nothing was wrong. Lisa immediately called my mom. My parents rushed to the mall. I know this because my mom called me in a panic, telling me to come right away. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her, but I got the message: Fiona was back, and they needed me there. I was just about to leave for the mall when Sarah stopped me. She said I needed to take the screenshots and evidence with me. She was right. If Fiona and Alex tried to spin some story, I would have proof of what they had really been doing. I printed everything out and put it in a folder. The whole drive to the mall, my hands were shaking. Part of me was relieved that Fiona was okay, but a bigger part was angry. All those days our parents had spent worried sick, all the crying and panic and police reports. And she had been partying in Mexico, spending their money, lying about being pregnant. I had spent 2 weeks feeling guilty about not helping her, and it had all been a scam. I parked my car and texted Sarah to let her know I had arrived. She offered to come for support, but I told her no. This was a family matter, and it was about to get really ugly. I grabbed the folder of evidence and headed into the mall, my heart pounding with each step. Update 2: the confrontation at the mall was worse than anything I could have imagined. When I got there, I found my parents near the food court. Mom was crying, and Dad was red in the face, pointing at Fiona and Alex who were trying to leave. Mall security had already shown up because Dad was shouting about them stealing money. I had never seen my father like this before. He was always the calm one, the one who handled everything with a level head. But now he was yelling, telling everyone who would listen how they had taken a loan against our house and disappeared. A crowd had gathered, and people were filming with their phones. Fiona looked different. Her hair was bleached blonde now, and she was wearing expensive clothes, obviously bought with our parents' money. When she saw me, she actually rolled her eyes and tried to push past the security guard. That's when I pulled out the folder of evidence. Right there in the middle of the mall, I started showing the photos. Pictures of them partying in Mexico while our parents were calling hospitals and police stations. Photos of Fiona drinking at clubs when she was supposedly pregnant and needed money for the baby. Alex's face went pale when I mentioned his previous scams with other girls. That's when Fiona finally broke. She started crying, but not like before when she was telling us about being pregnant. These were angry tears. She screamed that we were ruining everything, that Alex had promised her a better life away from our controlling family. She said she was tired of being the screw-up sister while I was the perfect one who could do no wrong. But the biggest shock came when she admitted she was never pregnant. It had all been Alex's idea. They had actually tried this scam with his parents first, but they didn't believe them. Alex knew them too well to fool them. So they targeted our family instead, knowing how our parents would do anything for their kids, especially Fiona. The whole plan was to get enough money to start a new life in Mexico. Alex had convinced Fiona that he could turn the money into more through some investment scheme. He had been filling her head with stories about starting a business and living like celebrities. She said she only agreed to come back to town because they were running low on money and thought they could get more from our parents. Someone in the crowd had called the police. When they arrived, things got even more interesting. It turned out Alex had an existing warrant for similar scams in 2 other counties. He had done this before, just like Jenny's friends had told us. When the police ran his name, they found he was wanted for fraud and theft by deception. They arrested Alex on the spot. Fiona started screaming that she had nothing to do with it, that he had manipulated her into everything. The police took her statement but let her go because she claimed to be a victim of his manipulation. My parents, despite everything, immediately jumped to defend her. Mom was hugging her, saying they would figure everything out. I stood there watching this scene unfold, feeling like I was in some bizarre dream. The sister who had helped steal our parents' money, who had let them worry sick for weeks, who had faked a pregnancy to get money, she was being consoled and protected. Meanwhile, I was the bad guy for not giving up my college savings for their scam. The police asked my parents if they wanted to press charges against Fiona. Of course, they said no. Dad kept saying she had been manipulated, that she was young and didn't know what she was doing. The same excuses they had been making for her our entire lives. They took her home that day. On their way out, Mom turned to me and said I should come home too, that we needed to be together as a family to get through this. I just laughed. After everything that had happened, they still didn't get it. They still couldn't see how their constant enabling of Fiona had led to this. I told them I would be staying at Sarah's. Dad started to say something about families sticking together, but I cut him off. I showed them more screenshots from my folder, all the pictures of their precious victim partying with their money, spending it on designer clothes and luxury hotels. Then I walked away. The next day, I found out Alex had taken a plea deal. He would give information about his other scams in exchange for a lighter sentence. Fiona got community service because she agreed to testify against him. My parents had to sell our house to pay off the loan they had taken. They moved into a small apartment, but they still have Fiona living with them. They're still making excuses for her. Update 3: I'm writing this from my college dorm room, and it still feels surreal how much has changed in the past 6 months. I got into my dream school out of state, and my savings, the ones I refused to give up, are helping me get through my first semester. I have a part-time job at the campus library, and honestly, life is pretty good when I'm not thinking about my family. Alex is serving his sentence. Turns out he had scammed 5 other families, not just 2 like we initially thought. The police found a pattern going back 3 years. He would target girls from middle-class families, usually ones with parents who were doing okay but not rich enough to brush off a major financial loss. The pregnancy story wasn't even original, he had used it twice before. Fiona completed her community service last month. She's still living with our parents in their small apartment. I heard from Sarah, who heard from Jenny, that Fiona is working as a waitress now. Apparently, she tells everyone that she's the victim in all this, that she was young and manipulated by an older man. She's gotten really good at playing the victim card. My parents had to sell our childhood home. The loan they took out for Fiona and Alex was too much to handle with Dad's regular mortgage payments. They got a small 2-bedroom apartment in a not-so-great part of town. Mom had to start working at a local grocery store to help with bills. It's funny how they always said they were saving for retirement, and now all those savings are gone because they couldn't say no to Fiona. Last week, they tried to contact me again. Mom called from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. She started by asking how college was going, then casually mentioned they were struggling with bills. She asked if I could help them out since I was doing so well with my campus job. When I didn't respond, she started crying about how family needs to support each other. I blocked that number too. Sarah says I'm being too harsh, that they're still my parents and they were victims too. But she doesn't understand. This isn't just about the money or even about Fiona's scam. This is about my entire life of being held to impossible standards while Fiona got away with everything. About them threatening to kick me out because I wouldn't give up my future for her lies. About them still defending her even after everything she did. I got a letter from Fiona last month. She wrote about how sorry she was, how she had learned her lesson, how she missed her big sister. She even tried to make jokes about our childhood memories. I ripped it up without finishing it. The old Fiona, the sister I grew up with, maybe I could have forgiven her. But this new Fiona, the one who let our parents worry for weeks while she partied with their money, who still plays the victim, I don't know that person. Sometimes I miss having a family. When my roommate's parents visit and bring her home-cooked meals, or when I see families moving their kids into dorms, it hurts a little. But then I remember how they treated me, how they were willing to throw away my future for Fiona's lies, and I know I'm better off without them. I'm focusing on my studies now and building my own life. I've made some great friends here at college, people who actually value honesty and hard work. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have a relationship with my family again, but right now, I'm happier without their drama in my life. And my savings? They're paying for my education, just like I always planned. No scams, no lies, no manipulation, just honest work paying off exactly how it should.